Yeah, Matthew Tkachuk was not obviously 100% healthy in this tournament, but it was really Brady who kind of seemed to be the poster boy for Team USA in this tournament, and kind of almost like a coming out party for him in terms of people seeing just how great a talent he is.
Well, because all we've seen with Brady Tkachuk is, the frustration of playing for a Senators team that has underachieved. And this year, the Senators have been good, and they're very likely going to make the playoffs. But we got to see in the middle of the season what Brady Tkachuk looks like in these big games where the intensity, the physicality picks up. And not to mention, the guy can play. And he plays at a high level, so he can score. And I think, yes, it's a coming out party. It's just exposure to a guy who is tailor-made and built for playoff hockey, hasn't been able to do it, and he probably can carry something away from this experience, bring it back to Ottawa and say, guys, I just saw what it's like to play at the highest level with the best players, and it's we're getting there now. We're raising the bar, and that's good news for the Senators, and it's good news for Brady.
It's got to be great news for the fan base, just even more tantalizing for this team to get back into the postseason, this Ottawa team. Jordan Binnington, we heard from him, so thoughtful. This really meant a lot to him.
It's really interesting with Binner because I think as an underdog, he really thrives in that role. If you go back throughout the course of his career, in the OHL, he played for the Owen Sound Attack. Ended up winning an OHL championship. They were the underdogs, but they beat the Mississauga St. Michael's Majors at the time, who were the overwhelming favorites. And then in the Stanley Cup, he's the underdog goalie that kind of came out of nowhere. They beat the Boston Bruins, and he really relishes that role. And what is he tonight for Team Canada against the United States? He is the underdog goalie going against the best goalie on the planet in Connor Hellebuyck, and he's the guy who steals the show. I'm not sure many people would have had Jordan Binnington stealing the show en route to Team Canada winning the Four Nations face-off, but that was the case. And so, he really has embraced this underdog role, plays well in that situation. And, the whole, sideshow act that we see sometimes, it's a little bit of a performer self that he puts on just to keep him sharp and engaged. And, it's always met with some animosity, whether it's, a viral moment of him trying to fight someone, skating to the bench, maybe sticking someone in the face. But you're right, he's very thoughtful. Yeah. It's just, there's a little bit of an alter ego sometimes when it comes to when he's a performer. But he's done exceptionally well as an underdog in his career.
He sure has. So Jon Cooper, Team Canada head coach, how much credit, Frankie, should he get for this victory? Did a lot of line juggling early on, and then really seemed to settle onto a lineup that obviously went to victory in the end.
A lot. And Jon Cooper does this a lot. He does tinker with his lines. If you talk to anyone who follows Tampa closely, they will say that, the lines will be out there in warm-up, and then they're in the blender early on into the first period. But, there's a few things. Finding someone to play with Connor McDavid, and Braden Point was that guy that really found a home with him. That worked. You needed to get Connor McDavid playing more in the offensive zone, consistently, sustained time. But then in this game, finding a way to put Mitch Marner, who had been filtered lower in the lineup, was playing on the third line. We saw some ice time diminishing. Yep. Saw that he was going and having a good night, putting him back up to Connor McDavid's line, even though earlier in the tournament it didn't necessarily have the best look to it. I think speaks to Jon Cooper's ability to make changes and adjustments in the moment, and obviously that led to the game-winning goal, which was so crucial.
You brought up Mitch Marner, so I have to ask you about him. There was a narrative going into this game that this tournament was maybe not so good for Mitch Marner.
It was the case,
right?
It was true coming into this game, wasn't it? Outside of the overtime goal against Sweden, Mitch Marner had every opportunity to play with McDavid, to play big minutes, and what had happened was his role got diminished. He went lower in the lineup. And credit to Mitch Marner, because he came back in this game and he wasn't afraid at all. He was in the middle of the ice. He was making plays. Just everything that Mitch Marner is in the regular season for the Toronto Maple Leafs, he was in this game. And I think, you always look at the playoff performances by Toronto, and that's associated with Marner, Matthews, Nylander, but he showed that he can handle the big one in this one. And so that's, it went from maybe not as reassuring as you would have liked it to be to quite reassuring after seeing his performance. moving up in the lineup, playing with the marquee player, and then having the marquee moment.
It seemed like the two guys who put together Canada's overtime winner were the guys who needed to be on the score sheet the most in that moment.